And I do have with me Mr. Sam Kargwo, who is also a legal practitioner. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you did hear Mr. Wankwo there. He said that
the
president should implement the initial letter sent by the Senate to the executive in an unblemished manner. Do you agree with him?
Well, let me put it in perspective or within context. The person involved is categorized as a personal staff of Mr. President. Mind you have advisors, you have the ministers, all of these are appointed by the president, but they are put on a separate category. The office of the Secretary of the Federation is categorized as a personal staff of Mr. President. An accusation against that particular staff is a direct accusation against the presidency, the office of the president. It is within that context that we should actually look at the response of Mr. President to the initial letter of the Senate. I commend the Senate for initiating the investigation and investigating the allegation against the SGF. But I have a little bit of a doubt as to whether they didn't go beyond the limit of recommending. Mind you, within the context of separation of powers, the legislature is enjoined not to make legislative judgments. If you make your investigation, which you are empowered to do under Section 88 of the Constitution, you are empowered to make investigation, either to make law or to expose corruption. What the law gives you there is to expose the corruption. It did not give you power to make a judgment. Let me explain what I'm saying here. You as an individual, what is not taken from you by the law, you have rights to do. For the public authority or public person, what is not given, he cannot take. You understand? So my thought is that after that investigation, they should simply have given their own findings to Mr. President and not make the categorical recommendation that sack and prosecute. Sack on the basis that you already believe that he has committed a crime. To me, that's a judgment. But that's not beside the point. I agree entirely with the moral sentiment expressed, because if for anything, charity must be resident at home.
I'd like to first of all interrupt you on that one, because you just talked about you talked about recommending recommendations and judgments.
Yes.
But if they have done an investigation, it is logical that they should have a conclusion. What have you arrived at the end of your investigation? And usually we know that the Parliament will always send a recommendation. If the recommendation is within or sounds like a judgment, isn't it within their right?
It is not. There is a very thin line between recommendation and judgment, like I have said. If they had simply just said that we think there is a reason, there is the possibility of a crime having committed here, and we suggest that further investigation by the appropriate authority be made. But they are thinking that the evidence they have gathered and the investigation they have done is conclusive enough for Mr. President to sack the SGF.
Now, you were about to talk about the morality of it, because something interesting you raised. You said that an accusation against the personal staff of the president is an accusation against the president himself.
My thoughts.
If that is the case, you're talking about the moral burden now. You know, you say you agree with the position that has been put forward. How should that have played out?
What I'm saying, charity must not just begin at home, but must be resident at home. If, for anything, I think what this president would leave office with is the legacy of taking on corruption. And if for anything...
That's what he should leave office with?
Yes. That's what I think he should leave office with. And if for anything, if there is any reason, there is that kind of accusation against your own personal staff, you shouldn't think twice about it. Take an action so that you set the standards for others to follow.
So are you disappointed that the president has not taken that action?
Well, I would not use that word disappointment because it's a little bit harsh. You understand? Let me put aside, I wouldn't want to say what I think is playing here. Mind you, as an aside, so that you will see the political undertones to the two sides. The office of the SGF is the arrowhead in the prosecution of the president of the Senate.
Mr. Kwago,
yes. No, I'm coming.
We don't have a lot of time.
No, we don't have a lot of time.
In fact, we'll be going to break in about a minute
yes.
or two.
You understand? And the legislature, using his own authorities and within his own sphere of influence and power, has done what he thought it should do. And if I may use the street language, they've done in the secretary. If for anything, the SGF for now is a loser in the game. You understand? But I think what Mr. President is trying to avoid of the presidency is to admit that within his own home there is corruption. It's understandable. You understand? But like I have said, morally, irrespective of the collateral damage of that admission, I think it would have been better for him to accept the fact that indeed all is not well at home than for him to break up this argument. Because somebody has made a very good argument that if indeed you could make this sort of excuses and make an argument that the man should be considered not guilty until proven guilty, you should have also have that attitude when it came to the other personalities that have been tried in public. For an example, the judges. You understand? The way they went about the judges, that was not a standard. You understand? The investigation and the prosecution of the judges, the standard there was not the one he is now asking the Senate to abide by. So in that sense, you could say, yes, there is a kind of a double speaker or double standard. But I am saying the background to that is that political underplay.
And yet you're afraid to be hard on the president or say things as they are, even though we're talking about a country. I mean, we've heard several times how the president says, if this country doesn't kill corruption
will kill the country.
Going to kill it. I mean, that's how serious the problem of corruption is. And then you just say that, you know, the senators are accusing the SGF, which is like accusing the president of corruption. And rather than take this drastic action, what we see is another letter, and you say you're afraid to say, or you're shy to say you're not disappointed, even though you think that that's not the action he ought to have taken.
I'm hoping that the president will take the action, the right action of relieving the gentleman of his job or asking him to go on leave until investigations are made by the appropriate authorities. Somebody is saying the police. I don't think it's the police. The EFCC can investigate, because if for anything, the office of the SGF is not part of the members of the board of the SGF, so there is no issue of class of interest. They can investigate them, and if found guilty, or if found culpable, they should prosecute them.
Okay, so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, looking at the matter of the EFCC, what are your thoughts on that, the EFCC chairman? And the letter presented to the Senate on that?
Well, you see, that's also another issue we should be looking at. You know, here, all of us tend to believe that confirmation means approval. In America, and some of those appointments, they make it very clear. They say you must seek the advice and consent of the Senate, meaning that the standard is different from that of confirmation. Confirmation is post the act. It's more or less a ceremonial thing. What I expect the Senate to do is to look at the constitutional provision as to whether or not Magu is qualified to hold the job. But if you go beyond that and you base your reason on a letter written by somebody accusing the person of corruption, you come back to what I was saying.
Considering the reactions to both letters, do you think first of all, do you think that the reactions to both letters should be the same, and do you think both letters should have been submitted at the same time?
I don't think so. It's because he has commingled them. It's like we are looking at the two different issues with the same. That, for Margaret, to me, I don't think should be a problem. Because if for anything, the reasons given for the Senate for their withholding of their own consent or approval, you understand? Oh, sorry, confirmation does not hold water for me. Like I have said, and which I think they should be mindful of.
The DSS report doesn't hold water?
It shouldn't, because you see, you don't make criminal allegations against somebody and you act upon that criminal allegation as a legislator. Once you do that, you are taking the functions of the courts. You understand? That's what I'm saying. Just like the issue of hire and fire, you have the right to hire and fire, but if you give reasons, and the reasons touch on criminality, the law will say, no, it's not your job. Go and get the court to give its own signature to that criminality before you can act upon it.
No, but it says there are questions.
Yes.
If there are questions, doesn't it behove, the executive to bring people without questions for clearance?
Well, you see, what I am saying, allegations are still in the realm of allegations. For you to act upon them means that you are taking a judgment. Anything you do post-allegation is after judgment.
So what should they have done? I mean, if someone has questions hanging on their neck, and you're about to face the Senate for confirmation, what is the Senate supposed to do? Because any action might return a judgment.
No. Let me make a clarification now. The Senate has the constitutional power to confirm, and to me, the word confirmation is different from approval. Confirmation is more or less a clerical clearance to ensure that the person meets the constitutional requirement for that office, which are laid out very clearly in the Constitution, including that of national character. You understand? And if the person is taking over the tenure of somebody who has not concluded his own tenure, you also have to look at that provision that says the person must represent the same interest as the person who has left that office. You understand? So if you go through that and you leave those constitutional requirements for you to be eligible for the office, you go to the realm of accusing the person of criminal conduct, and you expect the presidency to act upon it, you are taking the job of the courts. You understand? That's the point I'm saying.
Well,
ordinarily, they could have said without making any...
Mr. Kagbo, I'm afraid that's where we'll have to leave it. We've totally run out of time. We've been speaking with Mr. Sam Kagbo, who is a legal practitioner, and that's where we'll have to wrap up this part of the show. I also think it will be the end of Sunrise. Let me sign out from here. Thank you so much for watching. And Maokwe Ogun is back to you guys in Lagos.
But you signed up based on your interim assumption. Well, yes, that's where we'll draw the curtains today of the program. We thank you all for watching. I'm Chamberlain Osaf.
Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman. Let us see you again.